That's why they pay athletes these fantastic salaries. I was listening to the radio the other day. They just contracted to pay one player on one team $6 million a year. Can you believe this?
And why is that?
It's the Roman circus. What does the emperor do when the people become restive, and when the people are asking questions, and when the people don't like the policies of the emperor? He sends them to the circus. He creates a circus. He builds a giant coliseum. And he begins to throw the Christians to the lions. And he has great chariot races and football games and basketball games, all to keep the idiots preoccupied with things that don't mean anything in the scheme of the entire world, so that they don't have the time to learn what the truth is, so they don't ever get smart enough to learn how they're being manipulated, so they don't ever question the emperor. That's why they pay a player on a football team or a baseball team $1 million or $2 million or $3 million a year. It is the Roman circus. I know men who don't know anything in the world except who plays third base for the Mets. And they think that's a great accomplishment. And they meet and pat each other on the back and bond and go have cocktails and talk about what this guy that plays third base for the Mets did in last night's game. Sad. It's really sad.
All right, being brought in with a little William Cooper there. If you don't know who he is, he wrote that book, Behold a Pale Horse. And what he says is very, very true. Anyway, this is For Liberty. I am your host, Nick, here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, revolution.radio, iTunes, Zeno.fm, Roku TV, another one I actually get to remember, and a whole bunch of others that I can't tell you because I never write them down because of my extraordinary secretarial skills. Be sure to go to the homepage, sign up with Chatsy and get in the chat room and have a free exchange of ideas with everybody on there. It's always a lot of fun. And if you got something for sale, pick up one of the advertising slots, or if you see something you like there, buy it. It's always pretty. I like Extendivite myself, but it helps keep us on the air. And as always, if you got some change burning a hole in your pocket, find some under the seats of your couch or in the cushions of your automobile during some routine cleaning. I think I probably got about $1 million down there at this point. And if you happen to pick some up off the streets of San Francisco, please wash it. Sterilize it before you send it to us by hitting that donation button up at the top of the page. We are 100% listener supported, and we need all the help we can get to keep us on the air because we don't get the big bucks like fake stream media to tell you nonstop lies and keep you in a state of hallucinogenic euphoria that they claim you have, even though you have no money left because of the wonderful Biden economy. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I meant Putin economy. At 9:30, I'm going to have a guest come on. I don't have guests on regularly. I'd like to get them some more, but for some reason they somehow always forget to get back in touch with me after I tell them. But this guy didn't. This guy I met him over the weekend. I've seen him before at events. This is going to be Orlando Owens, who is running for the state treasurer of Wisconsin. And he's a real fun guy. He's not, trust me when I tell you this, he's not a politician by any stretch. So when 9:30 rolls around, I will be ringing him up. He's on his way back down to Milwaukee from an event way up here near where I was today. I didn't get to go to it, but that's a long trip to get back down to Milwaukee where he's from. So I am going to try to cram as much of what I wanted to talk about tonight into the first half hour of the show. And depending on how much time he gives us, if he has to leave before the show ends, then I'll get back to the rest of it. But the big one, by the way, it's not that stupid January 6th made-for-television special disease of the week type of thing with all the usual talking heads sitting behind dais, wringing their hands and gnashing their teeth and basically just flat out lying to you. But not just flat out lying to you, but lying by omission as well. It has been come forward that people have said that they've selectively edited video clips and interviews. So I don't want to talk about that. We've already seen that. It's not even worth our time. The big one this week is we have just been stabbed in the back once again by our controlled opposition party known as the Republicans, and this was in the Senate. The House bill for all those fantasy gun control laws, none of which, by the way, are constitutional or legal, passed out of the House, got moved up to the Senate, and of course the Senate, well, Republicans being not all of them, by the way, but the ones who did turn tail, these gutless, spineless Democrats with an R after their name. Well, we compromised and we got what we wanted and they didn't get what they want. Never mind. They're by saying things like that, they're blinding you to the fact that they literally moved the goalposts once again. Well, maybe not literally, but they moved the goalposts once again. Okay, they got that little, the Democrat Communist Party got that little bump forward towards complete gun confiscation of American citizens. So our neighbors to the north, well, they're suffering with that right now because their little blackface dictator-in-chief, Klaus Schwab's butt boy Justin Trudeau, has up there and has told them, you are not getting handguns anymore. We're taking them all. He's basically going to take everything, because what does a tyrant fear more than anything else? An armed society capable of fighting back. Well, our government has been working towards that for a long time. They haven't been making headway. They're making some pretty good headway now. And I'll say this once again, and like I always do, there is no such thing as a constitutional gun control law. By the way, 4 of these 10, by the way, there were 10 of these senators, and I will be giving out their names. 4 of them are retiring. So they got nothing to lose. They probably got a nice fat paycheck out of it, some kind of a nice parting gift, I'm sure. But they're retiring. The other 6, they're not up for re-election for another 4 years. So they got nothing to lose. And they're counting on the very nanosecond short attention span of the American voting population to not remember that they did this in 2022, just before the midterm elections. But we got health care, mental health care for students, and and you also are getting the age restrictions on it. You're getting the red flag. They're saying they're not getting the red flag gun laws, but they're doing it in a very around, backdoor kind of a way of doing it. And of course, there's all kinds of incentives for the state. You do this and we'll give you some money for all this stuff. And none of these greedy bastards in any of these liberal states especially are going to turn down money from the federal government. Never mind the strings attached to it. But the name, here we are. I just had it. Here we are. So here are the ones who sold you out. These so-called Republicans who are not Republicans. I don't even call them rhinos. They're just communist Democrats, just like the party. They should just switch over and put the D at the end of their name so they can stop the pretense. But if they did, they wouldn't get elected in their respective states. You got John Cornyn from Texas of all places. I hope Texas really beats this guy down. Figuratively, please. We really don't want violence. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Really, we really don't. Wink, wink. Tom Tillis, who's from North Carolina, Republican, supposedly. Roy Blunt from Missouri. Richard Burr from North Carolina, Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, Susan Collins, no big surprise there, from Maine, Lindsey Graham, no big surprise from Grahamnesty from South Carolina, Rob Portman from Ohio, Mitt Romney, once again, no big surprise from Utah. I really hope these people from Utah are pissed off at this guy. I really hope they're regretting their decision. We tried to tell you when he was getting elected 2 years ago, don't vote for this guy. No, but he's one of us. No, guess what? He's not. Last but not least, Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania. Well, from Pennsylvania, not really a big surprise. So these people are all turned around, and of course, they're announcing common sense bipartisan proposal, protect America's children and keep our schools safe. No, that's not what they're doing. What they're doing is they're moving the goalposts once again incrementally towards complete gun confiscation. They're only doing it incrementally because they can't do it all at once. Remember Dianne Feinstein's famous words, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in. If I could have got 51 votes in the Senate, I would have had them do it. So, once again, we got to deal with people in our government who hate. Why? Honest to God, I can't understand why people go and vote anymore. We constantly get stabbed in the back every single time. But here's kind of what here's some of the things in their compromised bill, which, by the way, still has to go back to the House once they get it all written up. Intervention orders. Okay, provides resources to the state and the tribes to create and administer laws to help ensure that deadly weapons are kept out of the hands of individuals whom a court has determined to be a significant danger to themselves or others. Yeah, you can see that ruling going through. We find you to be significant danger. You lose your rights. You're under the Second Amendment. Investment into children and family mental health services. Now that sounds good. There's money attached to it. They want to help people increase access to mental health and suicide prevention programs. Sounds pretty good, right? And other support services available in the community, including crisis and trauma intervention and recovery. Now, here's the thing. This is how they start flagging people. Now, I don't have a problem with people who actually need mental help. Get it. The resources are available there. But this is a national expansion. This is something that should be done at the state level, not on a national level. Again, federal power overreach. Protections for victims of domestic violence. So convicted domestic violence abusers, individuals subject to domestic violence restraining orders are included in NICS, including those who have or have had continuing relationship or romantic and intimate relationship. See, here's the problem with this one. You can get a restraining order at the drop of a hat. A woman goes into a police station. My boyfriend beats or my husband beats on me. I need a restraining order. Here, they run it through the system. Rubber stamp, bam. Here you go. You, by the way, as on the receiving end of this, you lose your guns, and now you're going into the NICS system as a permanent resident. Again, registry. Funding for school-based mental health and supportive services. And once again, they make it sound nice. Early identification and intervention programs and school-based mental health and all wraparound services. Okay, sounds very nice on the surface. Dig underneath it a little bit. Okay, they're going to start flagging people. I mean, how are they going to start flagging people? What's going to be the criteria to ID and then intervene on your behalf? Okay, you've got to get past the headlines when you read into some of this stuff. And I'm just going through the cliff notes here. Funding for school safety resources. Okay, what? Support school violence prevention efforts and provide training to school personnel and students. Okay. I hope would include arming the teachers, maybe having in either off-duty or even retired military or police personnel working as security, people who are already trained in how to use them, firearms, in the case of an emergency like that. It will cut down a hell of a lot of problems. Clarification definition of federally fired license owner cracks down on criminals who illegally evade licensing requirements. By the way, that's already a crime. That's already a crime. Penalties for straw purchasing. Straw purchasing is already a crime. If you purchase guns for people you don't know, and believe me, even if you want to buy a firearm as a gift and you start going through that process, yeah, you get double checked, you get triple checked, on top of the normal check that they do for you if you're just buying it for yourself. Under 21 enhanced review process. So if you're under 21 years of age, 18 to 21, by the way, is of the age of majority. It will require an investigative period to review juvenile and mental health records, including checks with state database and local law enforcement. So if you were like a screw up as a teenager, well, they get to go and look at that to decide whether or not you can have a gun. It's an extra waiting period of time. In the meantime, when you turn 18, you can go in the military and go off and fight a war for some of these people who you wouldn't spit on, simply because they told you to. And of course, telehealth investments. So this is actually doing things, having sessions and health services through televideo, teleconferencing, whatever. Because we saw over the last couple of years how well video classrooms worked. Now, the other part of this, which I don't have in front of me, is exactly how much money are they allocating to them? How much money are they going to take from the taxpayers to step all over their rights once again? If you want to read, I suggest you do. Go into, you can go to govtrack.com, go in there, look for this bill, the Protecting Our Children Act, and read. You can read more in detail because it will give you the text. Because I have a guest coming on, I don't have time to go into all of it here. A couple other things I want to hit before we get going here. You've heard what happened in Coeur d'Alene. I hope you heard what happened in Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene is a town in Idaho, right across the state line from Washington. And, of course, they were having their gay pride day parade, throwing rainbows and probably dancing in front of kids who didn't want to be there and parents who were forcing them and all of that, and God knows what else was going on. But they were doing their parade and all of that stuff. Well, the police got a tip. The police got a tip that a bunch of people were in a van, armed, and ready to start violence against all the people in the gay community up in Coeur d'Alene. And it was one of the most damn hilarious things I've ever seen. Let me see. Number one, they had no firearms. They had, weapons that you would probably go into a medieval battle with, if you're like one of the cast members of Braveheart or something. And, of course, they were all dressed exactly the same. Let me see. Khaki pants, black shirts, masks over their faces. Not the stupid mask that you wear that's supposed to protect you from a virus when it really doesn't do anything. No, these were like balaclavas. The full-on mask with just the eye holes cut out of them. And I was watching the video of it, and they had these guys handcuffed with hands behind their back, all kneeling on the ground. None of the cops ever bothered to take the masks off of these people. And gee, I wonder why that would be. Who gave them the tip? How did they know that these people were all in the van? Somebody got a tip off. And, well, the police chief of Coeur d'Alene had a press conference about it, of these arrests of 31 men. By the way, of course, they were all tied to a white racist hate group. White nationalists. Of course, that's the big headline on this. And, of course, thanks to the quick and decisive actions of our brave police department up in Coeur d'Alene and the FBI, this was thwarted immediately. because we've never seen anything like that ever happen before. But the police chief gave a press conference. Now, there was a citizen journalist there, who started asking questions. The police chief did not like the questions he was asking and did not want to answer them. So I'm going to give you a quick snippet out of that. It's only a few, but the chief is very condescending to this person.
Just a follow-up question on that, sir.
Are you with the media, sir?
I'm not. I'm a citizen.
Okay, I'm going to ask.
Just one follow-up question, sir. Online, there was an officer of yours that was filmed stating that there was information and embedded feds or informants within that group. Is there any veracity to that? It was an officer of yours that made that statement on the scene.
No, I think you're completely mistaken. So let me be very clear.
Available.
Let me be very clear here. These were not law enforcement officers,
of course,
that we arrested. These were members of the hate group Patriot Front. These were not Antifa in disguise, nor were they FBI members in disguise.
That wasn't my question, sir. My question was regarding the video that's showing online of one of your officers making the statement, contrary to what you're saying, that you were aware that there was embeds and so on and so forth. I'm not making an assertion one way or the other. I'm just simply suggesting that when you come to a press conference and you're making a statement one way, and this video isn't something that was been ginned up in some conspiracy manner. It's actually someone who videoed an officer of yours on the scene.
Okay, so two things. Number one, I have not seen the video and the comments that you're speaking about because I have not heard that comment made in any of the videos that I've watched regarding that incident. I was on scene at the stop the entire time. My body cam video will be available once it's appropriate, once everything's being released. You're not going to hear that comment coming from me or any of my command staff, so I'm not sure where that comment came from.
Well,
and secondly, hang on. Since this is a press conference, I'm going to ask you to be quiet, and I'm going to answer questions from the press at this point.
Wow, shut him down real quick, didn't he? God forbid. If in case you didn't know what the guy was asking, I know it was a little bit quiet. He was asking about a statement that one of the officers made on the scene, which was, yes, they had an informant within the group of 31 men that dimed them out and alerted the police to what was going on, which is why they were so Johnny on the spot. And said chief police officer of Coeur d'Alene said, I don't know anything about it. And now, sit down, shut up. I'm going to ask the real press. Let them ask me some real questions so that we can continue on with the official narrative. This has been going on way too long. We've tired of these officials basically shutting down citizen journalism, especially, since the so-called real journalists and the fake stream media are not doing their damn job. They're not asking any questions. They're pushing a narrative. And obviously, this got under the police chief's skin. How dare you ask a counter-narrative question? How dare you contradict what we're trying to tell you is the truth, even though we're not going to back it up with anything? When it's on video, I saw the video. I saw them. They had a guy running around where these guys were getting busted in their khaki pants and black shirts and balaclavas. And one of them, he had the guy who was at the scene asked him, like, how did you know this was even happening? How did you even know that these people were in the truck? Oh, we got a tip. Somebody told us we had a tip. Somebody from inside gave us a tip. And it was just like, and this police chief is flat out denying it and then telling this citizen journalist to sit down and shut up. That's where we're at. How, don't stray from the narrative or we're going to jump all over you. And yet somehow we are expected to constantly believe what we're being told. Take it as fact, regardless of if it flies in the face of any realistic expectations of honesty from the fake stream media. One more thing I want to get to. Well, two more things. I hope I can get them in. But I want to hit on this one first because I've got a couple minutes before I got to call Orlando in. Remember back, no, this goes into the whole Ukraine situation and our involvement over there. Remember when Putin came out and was saying, one of the reasons I went over there is because there are bioweapons labs over there in the United States. That he said NATO was funding, and the U.S. and NATO. Oh, he's full of it. He doesn't know it. He's just acting as an aggressor. Nothing to see here. There are no biolabs over there that we have anything to do with. Remember how Anthony Fauci said that we had nothing to do with the Wuhan lab, and then oops, yes, we did. Well, the Pentagon, the U.S. Department of Defense, just released a statement, a document called the Fact Sheet on Weapons of Mass Destruction, Threat Reduction Efforts with Ukraine, Russia, and other former Soviet Union countries. And you go down towards the end of this, and under a part called Ukraine has no chemical weapons programs. I believe that's the heading it's under. Or no, Ukraine has no biological weapons programs, excuse me. And there's several paragraphs to read about what they're doing in there. And here's the one that's the kicker. The United States has also worked collaboratively to improve Ukraine's biological safety, security, and disease surveillance for both human and animal health. You ready for it? Providing support to 46 peaceful Ukrainian laboratories, health facilities, and disease diagnostic sites over the last 2 decades, the last 20 years. Okay, the collaborative programs have focused on improving public health and agricultural safety measures at the nexus of non-proliferation. So when they said that we had nothing to do with any biotech labs over there, bioweapons labs, just whatever you want to call them, no. They just came out and said, yeah, we have been providing support for 46 of them. And, of course, we can believe our Department of Defense and our federal government when they say they had nothing to do with any kind of gain-of-function research, even though they were doing gain-of-function research, and had nothing to do with Wuhan, even though they had everything to do with Wuhan. I mean, how many more of these lies? I mean, maybe is this where monkeypox came from, or is that just from the gay pride parades that were going on, when they all the gay dudes started hooking up, which is essentially where it's getting spread at this point. But so here, once again, here's our government lying to our face, and then coming out later on saying, well, we did it, but we're going to bury this down at the end of this document. A document, by the way, that 99.5% of people in this country won't even read, so they probably won't even know it exists. And, of course, we can count on the fake stream media to make sure that it's in the headlines so that we all know about it and can be informed. And I got to squeeze this one in before we call Orlando. This is Gina McCarthy, who is a top Biden advisor, talking about social media and the green energy and how she thinks that they should handle it on social media.
And so the challenge is, now that we're moving from denial to actually just trying to disengage the public from understanding the values of solar energy, the values of wind energy, the benefits of clean energy. We have to get tighter. We have to get better at communicating. And frankly, the tech companies have to stop allowing specific individuals over and over again to spread disinformation. That's what the fossil fuel companies pay for. That's what folks who make money out of fossil fuels and don't make money and don't care about saving consumers costs. That's what they do. We have to be smarter than that.
So the tech company should censor anybody who has a differing opinion from the $93 trillion Green New Deal going into effect, which is why gas prices are so damn high. And there it is. They're pro-censorship. And they're saying we should be censored because we offer a different point of view. In case anybody thinks that solar energy is so great, just remember Solyndra. That's all I got to say. What an absolute money drain that thing was. So I am going to call Mr. Owens here. And hopefully he picks up. Because this guy is this guy is great.
Hello?
Hello, is this Orlando Owens?
This is.
Orlando, this is Nick. You are on the air on the For Liberty radio show. Welcome aboard.
Hello, my friend Nick. Welcome. Thank you for letting me come on tonight.
Hey, not a
I'm
problem.
Still on the road.
Are you still on the road or are you back?
I'm still on the road, but, we had to stop for a minute. I had to stop at that old white schoolhouse, man. Just had to take it in for a minute. I was on my way back.
The one in Ripon?
Correct.
In case anybody out there who doesn't know what he's talking about, there's a little schoolhouse in Ripon, Wisconsin, and it has the distinguished pleasure of being the birthplace of the Republican Party. So anyway, do you want to start now, or do you want to still finish getting to where you're going before you want to come on?
Nah, I still got a nice little road to go. I got about 30 miles to go, so we can have a conversation as long as you guys can hear me okay.
Sure, yeah, you sound good. So, well, let's do this. Tell us who you are.
Sure. So my name is Orlando Owens, and I'm currently running for Wisconsin State Treasurer for the last 7 years of my life. And currently I work for one of the most rock-solid senators that you could ever, wish to have for your state, U.S. Senator Ron Johnson. Before then, I worked for the state party here in Wisconsin. And before then, spent about 20 years in workforce development. I'm a married man of two.
Oops, she dropped. Let me call him back.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. It happens. Believe me, we're using the system that we have. We're used to technical difficulties. We just roll with it at this point.
Okay.
So,
but I'm married. I got a son. I have two sons. I got a 27-year-old and also a 13-month-old. So God is good. God is good. So I went to Whitewater here in Wisconsin for a few years. Finished my degree in business in Atlanta, Georgia, at a historical black college by the name of Morris Brown. But that's a little bit about me. I'm a minister, but God is working on me every day because I'm far from perfect. And that's kind of a little backstory about me.
Okay, so what got you into doing wanting to become the treasurer?
So for 7 years, I worked for Senator Johnson, and I had the privilege of working on a couple pieces of case work that was really important. One of the areas that I had to focus in was the federal program called it's the HUD program, which is Housing Urban Development. So I watched program dollars flow in and flow out to observe where the monies went and how those monies were spent and allocated, and if they met the goals of the department. So I've done that. I'm also one of the co-founders of the Joseph Project. The Joseph Project is an inner city ministry that we created about 7 years ago, myself, my best friend who passed away, Pastor Jerome Smith, and also Senator Johnson. And it was a jobs program, and we helped young men in particular and women, but work in manufacturing opportunities. So I did that, and in that time, Senator Johnson had to decide if he was running for office again, and I felt like there was more I could do for my state, and I did run for office at one time as for state office. I ran for alderman way back in the day, but state office I ran for assembly in my local area. But as Senator Johnson was thinking about his run or not run, I had to think about, like, man, am I done with the government? Do I feel I've done all I can? And that answer came back like, no. There's more that I really wanted to do and, help make better, right? And so I started thinking about, running for state office again. And I said, well, maybe not assembly. I live in Milwaukee, which, if you guys don't know, Milwaukee, Wisconsin is one of the most deepest blue areas, well, the deepest blue area in our state.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought about running, and I said, but I can't run for assembly or senate again. It has to be something different. And I started looking at some of the statewide offices. And that's pretty much how I, kind of looked at the offices and what I thought was attainable in my current situation. And I kind of selected treasurer.
Okay. Now, see, here was something that I found interesting when I met you on Saturday was, and somebody who was sitting at the table brought it up, and I had no idea about this, is that the state treasurer in Wisconsin at this point doesn't seem to have a whole lot of responsibility because all the departments that were supposed to answer to the treasurer now go answer directly to the governor. So
correct.
How did that switch happen? I mean, how do you take response? I mean, that's like a major consolidation of power in the governor's office.
So over the last, 15, 20 years, both Republicans and Democrats had basically took away the powers of the state treasurer and also the Secretary of State and really moved the responsibilities to the departments that reported back primarily to the governor. Both Republicans and Democrats have done it. We went to a referendum, I want to say maybe in 2006, that the legislator had put it on the ballot to eliminate these two positions. But the people of Wisconsin said no. They wanted the positions. But unfortunately, the duties were still stripped away. And so I'm running, quite honestly, to get those powers restored, because there was something about how our state was founded on the idea of checks and balances and also, balances of power, that
right.
The treasurer, Secretary of State are executive constitutional officers that are mandated in our Constitution. So that's kind of how the powers got stripped away, and I'm just an advocate for the idea of having a governor and not a king.
Right. Well, that seems the way that they want it, though. But now, isn't there a provision within the Wisconsin state constitution that says that they can't strip away the power, or did they just do the same thing that the federal government does and just ignore the state constitution as well? So the way the Constitution was written, the Constitution creates the positions, but the legislator gives them their duties. So what they did effectively was take away the duties, not eliminate the position, because the positions are in the Constitution, but they would power to give each one of those constitutional officers duties and powers. And so what they did was basically remove those duties and place them somewhere else, and they reported back to a different entity. In this case, they all reported back to the governor. Right. And like I said, that just seems like that's an awful big consolidation of power in one office. I would agree. That's one of the concerns that we find ourselves right now here in Wisconsin with a Secretary of State. Douglas Pollock has been here about 85 years. I'm kidding, but he's been here for over 30 years in office. But unfortunately, when you did that, there's no other checks and balances that we saw here in Wisconsin, a crazy election. And all the powers rested with the governor, so the governor had the final say on whatever happened. And there was no way, basically, to give an account for the election. And that's kind of the byproduct of, kind of speaking to what you said. When you consolidate all of the power, you consolidated all of the power. Exactly. Yeah, and we're seeing the end results of that now with the current governor in Wisconsin, who by the way is no friend to Wisconsin by any stretch of the imagination. But so you've got going into this, you've got to have some kind of I think a game plan to try to restore the powers to the treasurer's office. I mean, if you do, what is it? Or if you don't, what do you think you're going to be doing going forward then?
So I think there's a few different approaches. First thing is that there is still one pretty powerful position or duty the treasurer does have. The treasurer is part of a 3-person, let's call it committee, over the Board of Land and Commissions. That board, we sell state property, and those proceeds go to funding public school libraries, but also they have the ability to make microloans to local municipalities. The Board of Land Commission, some say, was the first bank of the state of Wisconsin. So we control a lot of the access to land, and also basically you also sell and control the timber because we control the land. So that board still it has about a $1.5, $1.8 billion trust fund that we can make microloans. So that is still a very powerful, I guess, committee to have. On that committee is made up of the treasurer, secretary of state, and also the attorney general. And that's kind of where I want to bring my workforce development and economic development skill set to the table of how do we make our counties as strong and as competitive as possible. Because I'm a firm believer of supporting local. I support local agriculture, local farmers. If we grow it in Wisconsin, we should buy it in Wisconsin. So I want to do that. So that's still a very powerful position to make a lot of things, a lot of good things still happen. Now, the other part of how to get the powers back, quite honestly, if you followed my campaign, it was one of the reasons why I never really, got into the dirty, the muck and the mire of attacking each other, other Republicans. I'm holding fast to Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, which is I won't talk down on another Republican, because ultimately I'm going to have to get the legislators to agree to give and restore some of the powers back to the treasurer, along with the governor. And it makes no sense at all to attack sitting legislators, to attack the potential governor candidates, because in the end, I have to work with them. Now, I understand that this probably won't be a priority in the new governor's, first 100 days. But if I could ask for one duty to restore it back to the treasurer, it would be the audit department. The audit department has the ability to subpoena all the books of each department. And I want to be able to give the people of the state of Wisconsin an accounting, a review, an assessment of where the departments are with the financial, records and what have they been doing. I would love to reshape the office of the employees that we do have in the department to make them kind of like internal, fact finders themselves, to evaluate each department, to look at the charter of each department and make certain that are they doing what we intended these departments to do? So that's one of the big things I would love to see the new governor do, if they could do it in the first 100 days, is to restore the audit department so that they would report back to the treasurer on the 100th day in their first 100 days, if possible.
Okay. Well, here's the thing, though. We all know there's always a little creative accounting, so to say, on the books. But if you're running for treasurer, obviously you're probably doing a lot more research into the department and everything. And just without actually being able to crack the books open at this point, just like on a gut instinct, how much mismanagement and fraud do you think is going on in Wisconsin as far as money is concerned?
I would definitely want to take a look at it, even if it meant that we have to go about it the long way. And the long way is asking for open record requests. And I hope it doesn't come to that point. But I can tell you, just working on the federal level with U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, the amount of just waste and just mismanagement of dollars. If state government is reflective, then it's tons. I think when you can look at a department and each department has discretionary spending, that's the first sign of a problem.
Right.
The second sign of a problem is when we do the accounting and how we manage our departments. The departments are, for a lack of better terms, they are penalized for having great fiscal restraints. The way we do government, at least in Wisconsin, for the most part, that each department has to spend the money allocated to those departments. If it does not spend those money, the department is penalized, which is just backwards to me, because I think if you have a great fiscal manager and they can save the taxpayers' money, that person should be rewarded and not penalized. Makes no sense at all. No sense.
Yeah. But I mean, because we're seeing the squeeze start to happen in Wisconsin, and I know that's a lot of that has to do with federal policy as well. But again, with Tony Evers, by the way, if anybody doesn't know who he is, he's the governor of Wisconsin. His policy is in place, and you've got this. The only thing I can say about him is this very corrupt Speaker of the Assembly who pulls a lot of power at this point. I think the gut feeling within people in Wisconsin, especially since the trust factor in our government is at an all-time low, that they think that there's money probably going out the back door. One of the big things that I disagree with Ron Johnson on is that, and I've said this before and I'll say it to anybody, is that $40 billion package, and by the way, that was just one package on top of the other, 12 or $13 billion that we sent over there. With the economy in the shape that our country is in right now, that was a big FU to this country. And so, but the thing is, our country is made up of all these individual states. We all have our individual rules and our own makeup that we got to go by. So the fact that now they have a treasurer who can't, at this point, crack the books open, do an audit. I would love to see an audit of the books in Wisconsin, and see what exactly is going on. Like, I'd love to see an audit of the Fed as well.
Well, we just had a influx of a ton of COVID money that we don't know exactly where it went and who got it and how it was spent. So, if I am elected, I mean, that's one of the first things I'll be asking. Let's kind of, find out who got this money, because all of these entities are going to be asking state legislators to, increase their local budgets and increase, more money in the budget. But no county, no entity is going to be able to really give us an accounting for all that COVID relief money. You're asking now for more money to support employees who you hired through COVID relief money that were never, really budgeted into your local budgets. And now that you got government, as the old saying goes, once government starts to grow, it's hard to cut it back. So now you have employees, and you're going to be requesting more money from your local taxpayers to pay for employees that you probably shouldn't have hired in the first place. But we had COVID money, so hey.
Yeah, oh my God, yeah, I know. It's something that makes you want to beat your head against the wall half the time.
I agreed.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm watching in Wisconsin right now. Again, a lot of this has to do with outside influences too. But I'm watching in Wisconsin. I'm watching the price index here, gasoline especially. That's the big indicator. I'm watching prices here as what they were in Los Angeles a year and a half ago, when they first started going up. And I'm watching it happen here, and I'm just like going, people are going to be in for a shock. I don't know how much more people can take. See, that's the other part. How much more of this inflation are people going to be able to take?
I talked to a lot of people along this campaign trail. I am the endorsed candidate for the state party, but all that really means to me is I have to just work harder, because I want the support of the patriot groups, people who are non-affiliated conservatives who are not part of the patriot groups, nor the GOP. But what I can tell you, in going around for this last year talking to people are definitely frustrated with the pump and the price of food. And, we just have the shortage of baby formula. Now we're having the shortage of women tampons. And so it just goes on, and we all are feeling it. So we have to make some really hard decisions. all of this government money that help people not to go back to work just had a profound impact on the local economies. I just met the other day with my local tavern league in Milwaukee, and they're still feeling the struggle of how, the shutdowns of those businesses just were, just tremendously painful, on top of trying to find employees who wanted to come back, because the benefit package that the government made was so sweet. It was so sweet. Like, well, I'm not going back to work when I can just sit back. And so
I can play my video games and drink beer and
just relax, whatever, So this is the byproduct of trying now to get people to come back to work. And I mean, employers have been just, in my humble opinion, just outstanding in any and everything they could do to attract employees, and people just, chose not to come back, and we're still trying to recover from that. To your point, with all the indexing thing, the price of, inflation, just everything is just happening, and the feds are playing with the money and the rates. But all this is just ridiculous with this current regime of liberal, progressive ideas of how to run a country and how to run the state. Tony Evers and Biden were in the same class together. They're birds of a feather. I mean, they're running. They think alike.
Yeah, they're running a very centrally controlled economy under the Keynesian economic model, and the one thing that people like that have never been able to figure out, and they never will admit it, is that Keynesian economics and a centrally controlled economy never works. It never works. You've got to open everything up to the free market. Get on to more of the Austrian economics. I mean, go read Mises, and the people from Mises, they're brain cells when it comes to economics, way better than I could understand half, if you get way too involved in it. But, and that always seems to work out, but it seems like we're stifling that. Now, here in Wisconsin, we live in the middle of farm country. This is prime farming real estate in Wisconsin. We got corn, soy, you get your local home farms. You've got the Amish people putting up their farms and everything. And with all of that, somehow yet we still have a problem getting food into the supermarkets. I mean, it's there, don't get me wrong. But how can you be in the middle of farm country and have a lack of produce? That doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
Well, one of the things that I've been keenly aware of, and as part of my campaign, is that we want to make certain that we always buy local first, like Wisconsin first. Like, there should be supply chain. To your point, like, wait a minute, we grow vegetables and fruit or whatever. We have meat and dairy. What are we doing importing from other states or other countries in Wisconsin? Like, our farmers should never be out of work. We should all of our institutions, at the very least, our schools, our prisons, our hospitals, that should be all local Wisconsin. And so I'm going to be a big supporter of just local. I want to be Wisconsin's best salesperson and his biggest advocate. Like, we got to buy Wisconsin. We got to, promote our stuff.
Okay.
And that's
Orlando,
my focus.
Can you hold on? We're going into the break here. Can you hang on till after the break and we'll come right back?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks. All right. Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is For Liberty. I am your host, Nick, here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, revolution.radio, zeno.fm, iTunes, and Roku TV, and a whole bunch of others that I can never remember because I never write them down because my organizational skills are somewhat lacking. Be sure to go to the homepage, log in with Chatsy, create an account, get into the chat room with everybody, have some free exchange of ideas, maybe some not so free exchange of ideas. I don't know. That's all up to you. And go up to the advertising spot. If you see something you like, pick it up. And if you got something to advertise, put it in there. It's relatively cheap compared to everywhere else. Well, it's not relatively cheap. It is cheaper than everywhere else. And it helps keep us on the air. And remember, if you find some change burning a hole in your pocket under the seat of your car, in the cushions of your couch, or if you happen to pick some up off the streets of San Francisco, please wash and sterilize it before you send it to us. But click that donation button up at the top of the page. Send it our way. We need all the help we can get to stay on the air. We are 100% listener supported, and we don't get paid the big bucks like CNN, who can make up stories as they go along just to fit whatever narrative that they happen to be pushing that week, even if it's different than the one they were pushing last week. So anyway, we have Orlando Owens here, who is running for Wisconsin State Treasurer. Orlando, why don't you give out your contact information? People can find out where to get in touch with you, where to get in touch with your campaign, and everything else.
Sure, no problem. Let me first say thank you again for letting me come on with you this evening. My phone number is area code 414-803-6003. That's 414-803-6003. My email address is Orlando, W-I-S as in Sam, at yahoo.com. And my campaign website is OrlandoForWI.com, Orlando4Wisconsin.com.
Okay, Gabe. So where'd we leave off at here?
Just talking in general about the money floating around and how we just need to have better transparency. And that's all. In the end, for me, what I really just want to provide the people of Wisconsin, first, I want to have them have transparent government, and also just give them a level of customer service. You know, I spent 25 years in the private sector, you know, even working for U.S. Senator Ron Johnson. One of the things you always had to have is this great customer service. You know, respond to emails, return phone calls, even deliver news that an individual may not necessarily agree with you on, but for whatever reason, we don't have a lot of great customer service in government. And I don't understand it because of corporate America.
We got terrible customer service in government.
Agreed, and that would never be able to be accepted in the corporate world. So I just want to be able to bring my problem solving skills to the State House in Madison to figure out some of the issues. The Joseph Project is a prime example of how creative thought that can be brought up and created without the need for government. We had young men who were on the system, and we work with young men coming out of prison. It's open to anybody, office free. It doesn't matter, right? These individuals were tax takers. After going through our program and helping them find employment, they became taxpayers. So that was like a double, a twofer. Instead of not only did they take money from the taxpayers, but now we also made them taxpayers themselves. So that's a type of, some people can identify problems. And I think a lot of people can do that. But only a few can come up with solutions. And that's what I want to bring, solution-based management, solution-based ideas that how do we make government work better? How do we make it work, more for the people?
Yeah, and I think that seems to be a big problem in government on all levels, local, state, and federal, is that they don't care about making it work better. They just want to, as long as the money keeps coming in. I think that's their primary focus is how much money can we take and do our pet projects and pad our bank accounts and everything like that. I mean, and if not, that is pretty much the perception of it, because it doesn't seem like they're very efficient at what they do.
Yeah, I can tell you just again, working on the federal level, it's just you wouldn't run your house the way we run government. Like I would never pay like $65 for a hammer. Yet still, that's what we charge.
That's the cheap one. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just unfortunate that when you have such, seemingly endless dollars, you can charge, $12 for an aspirin in the hospital. Like what? Because we have insurance, government insurance, and it's like it's unbelievable, man. Like this is not right. This is not how you do people. And I was raised by Southern grandparents, and I just learned a lot of lessons my grandma, my granddad always taught me. Do right by the people. And right now, I'm not sure government is doing right by the people.
No, they haven't been for a while. But when you get back onto the like the insurance part, well, here's the whole thing. And I've heard this from some pretty smart people, a lot smarter than I am anyway. Which, by the way, that's not really all that hard. But these economists, they were talking about when a government gets involved in a project, like when government got involved in helping to pay for college, government gets involved in healthcare, government gets involved in anything where there's going to be tax dollars involved, the costs immediately go straight up. I mean, because the people on the receiving end of those tax dollars they've got like the old cartoons with the dollar signs rolling over in their eyes. And Obamacare was a disaster. The cost of healthcare went up. Than you had when they got involved in the college tuitions. Now, college tuitions way back in the day, it wasn't, it was still costly, but it was affordable. Now it's not. You got people who are going into debt and they don't pay off these student loans for 30 years, maybe sometimes longer. So I don't, again, as part of as being treasurer of Wisconsin, if you get the job, how much influence would you have in being able to put at least a little bit of a kibosh on slowing down government intervention into the private sector?
I think one of the biggest things that I can bring to the table with this position, and I think sometimes, these are orphan positions, a friend of mine called it, because they don't have much power or authority at all. But I think one of the biggest things we have that I think sometimes are overlooked, it is the power of the bully pulpit. It is the power of getting the word out and creating awareness to the taxpayers, to the voters. And I think that's where also I believe I can be effective in just raising the alarm to people and helping organize people and having those town hall discussions with the people when those elected officials come in to the area. And we need to put the question to them on why. That was one of the biggest things what made me, as a black man in America, a freedom-loving American, want to become a conservative Republican. I've always had this thing in me to ask the questions why, and why you say that, and who said it. And I think that's the same thing I'll bring to the table as a treasurer, to say, well, who said that is the way it's supposed to be done? And who said it's supposed to be that much? And why are we doing that? And why are we doing this? And I think that's the power of why. It's very powerful. And I think that's what I can bring to the table. I've learned it working with Senator Johnson. I was already a dog before I met Senator Johnson and started working for him and the great and the people of the great state of Wisconsin. But working for him, he just made me a pit. He told me don't take no for an answer. Keep digging. Keep asking questions. Keep looking. And that's kind of the mindset I want to bring as treasurer. Like, no, you're not going to say, well, that's how we've always done it. Well, that doesn't mean it's right. Or, well, that's how much it costs. Well, no, let's get a second opinion about this. Right. I want to ask those tough questions that unfortunately maybe the governor won't be able to do every single day because he or she has a whole huge budget to deal with. But at least let me ask the tough questions, department by department, and why is this and why is that? And using, again, if the governor, and I understand this, that, once, entities have power, it is hard to relinquish power. And so I'm hopeful that the new governor, and I've talked to many of them, the candidates, I'm hopeful that the new governor would be willing to allow the powers to be separated in the way that the founders intended it to be. Because I do want to be I don't work for the governor. I work duly elected by the people directly. And I need to be held accountable, and I need to hold everybody else accountable. But if the governor, is, someone, I'm hoping the governor will be someone that will be open to say, okay, Orlando, what do you guys need to be effective as a treasurer? And I hope they understand and read the original intent of the Constitution of Wisconsin, of why we have powers that were separated. Because checks and balances are even needed amongst conservatives. Yes, there's a need for these constitutional positions that they all have the Secretary of State. I mean, they were charged with running the elections. Look what happened.
Look what happened there.
So
just
and they were
just
duly
out of
elected.
curiosity, you don't have to go one way or the other with it. I already know what my opinion is. I have voiced it very loudly to anybody who will listen. But what is your take on what happened in the last election?
I think there was a lot of concerns, man, from the voting in the park, of having no chain of custody, people who had indefinite confinement, who didn't have to provide a voter ID. I was part of that revolution here in Milwaukee with Rebecca Clayfish and Scott Walker. I was a foot soldier here locally advocating for voter ID and all the achievements that we did. But to see all these ballots that didn't have to have a voter ID, didn't have to have a signature of a witness, I'm like, well, wait a minute, man. So I couldn't tell you rightfully who actually won the election. I don't know. So I support the Gableman investigation. And maybe we have enough. I don't know. But someone gave, those retirement homes the ability for nursing aides to just, handle ballots with no one checking and
which by the way is a violation of state law.
And so to me, it's just, I know it was a mess, man. It was an absolute mess. So I don't know if Trump won the election, but I can tell you that it's questionable if he won Wisconsin. I can tell you that.
Yeah, and what really drives me nuts is when you see the Speaker of the Assembly, Robin Voss, and I forget what her name is, Wolf from the Megan Wolf from the Wisconsin Election Commission, saying there was no problem, everything was fine, everything worked, and it's like when somebody rips you off and then they tell you, I didn't rip you off. What are you talking about? You have no idea. And meanwhile, they're like, say these, like, just out of, as an analogy, they steal your piece of cake. They're eating it in front of you, and they're telling you, I didn't take your cake. I don't know what you're talking about. And that's what it feels like. It was a big slap in the face of the people in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of things that should have never happened. So yeah, I'm not happy. I want to continue the Gableman investigation. More. I want to know more. I want to know about the Zuckerbucks. One of the things as a treasurer, that was part of it, that if the powers were duly delineated as the executive officers, that would have been one of the things that I could have, as a treasurer, raise the alarm on. Like, wait a minute, where's this money coming from? The elections are ran by local governments. Like, show me your books on where you got this money and where did that money go? What do you mean you use it to get out the vote effort? Show me what you did with this money. And the treasurer would have had the ability to subpoena those books. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing, local county? What are you doing? And having the attorney general to back up those subpoenas, it would have been another layer of accountability that, could have happened. Not saying that I could have did. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and that's one of the reasons those powers have to get back to the treasurer, because having that power consolidated into the governor's office and maybe even to the speaker's office, it breeds corruption. I mean, who does the governor answer? Oh, I answer to myself. I don't have to answer to anybody else. And which is kind of seems what he's telling everybody. So when they did get the Zuckerbucks, they did put everything out there. Again, there's a lot of these politicians are not going to turn down that kind of money that was being spread around. And there was no oversight of it. That was what the big problem was. So if you get in and you can get that power back, we could actually maybe get some honest oversight of all this money that's coming in and influence on our elections and everything.
It was another check and balance. That's the whole idea of balancing of the powers. There's another person that said, wait a minute. The Secretary of State, they would have ability to look into the election piece of it. The treasurer, you start the paper trail of the money. So we had these different roles in a balanced government that we all would have played. The Secretary of State would have started looking into all the voter irregularities. Treasurer, you start tracking the money and asking subpoenas for money. Like, who got this money? Show me who got the money. What did you do with the money?
Yeah, the whole Jerry Maguire thing. Show me the money.
Show me the money. Right. So, but that's how ideally this thing should have worked. That if all the powers were balanced what they should have been, each executive position had a role to play in this investigation.
Right, and it's frustrating to me because I've met Rebecca Kleefisch, who's, again, she's another candidate for governor, in case anybody doesn't know who she is. I was talking with Andre Jacques on Saturday, and if anybody doesn't know who he is, he's a state senator out of the Green Bay area. And I asked him the same question. If you can't get the election system fixed by this November, not even by November, but by August when we have the primaries here in Wisconsin, how can I trust it, and why should I even get out of bed to vote? Rebecca went on a 5-minute long diatribe, coming up with a million reasons why I should, but none of them made any sense to me. Andre was just kind of really almost didn't even have an answer for me. Because he knows what's going on in Madison, where they're not even seriously trying to fix the election integrity. They don't want to know about this. Janelle Branchin, who I talked to, in case anybody doesn't know who she is, she's a member of the Assembly who's been a really big spearhead in finding the fraud in the election system here in Wisconsin. And so I talked with her, and she was telling me, again, it's the same thing. Jefferson Davis, another guy who's been spearheading investigation into it. It's like you have what you know is only the tip of the iceberg from what we know. But for whatever reason, we cannot get that information out there. So, I'm going to ask you the same question. If they can't get it fixed, if they absolutely refuse to fix the election system in Wisconsin, if they're going to go back and do it the same way that they've been doing it with, why should I crawl out of bed that morning and make my way down to the polls, which is only a quarter mile down the street from my house?
The short answer, and not to be flippant, but we have to. We have to go out and vote. And I'll be one of the first ones to admit, it sounds like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. Mm-hmm. I'm asking you to vote for me in a system that you don't fully trust anymore. I get it. I know what I'm saying.
Not even fully trust. Not even not fully trust. I don't trust it at all.
So I get it, but I know that the end result, the alternative, is for us not to show up at all. Then we have no chance, and then we definitely forfeit. Then we do give Tony Evers back another 4 years. Then we do lose Brian Johnson and the filibuster on the federal level. And we've already seen what the Democrats want to do on the federal level, which is to federalize our local elections. So all the changes that we want to see happen will never happen because they will change the election process and they will take away states' rights in election and make them federal elections. So it's like we have no choice but to show up and overwhelm the system. Senator Johnson talks about overwhelming the system. We have to. And none of the changes that we want, from getting rid of the voting machines, getting rid of, voting in the park, a lot of these things will go to a state Supreme Court that we don't know how Hagedorn will vote on things here in the state of Wisconsin, and then may make it to the Supreme Court. The alternative, if we don't show up, then we truly will. We surely will lose. That's the best pitch I can give you or anyone else. There's nothing that I can tell you more than the truth about the motivation to vote. Because for us not to show up and take a stand, I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. And that means I'll go out and vote again. And we're going to have, I look at what happened a few months ago here in Wisconsin when we flipped local school boards and we flipped local county boards that, became more conservative leaning in some cases, or we picked up 2 seats. That was because we believed in the system one more time. And we're going to have to ask the people, as every candidate who's running for state house, you have to ask the people, trust the system one more time. But it has to be with so many people that it gets out of there. I forget the author, but there's something called the fraud margin that they talk about. And I guess that's about, 18 to 20,000 votes. We have to get over that fraud margin so they cannot cheat. They're going to cheat,
They're going to try.
Right, and we have to get out of that 20 percentile. But I believe also there's been an enormous effort from having not just poll watchers, but poll workers.
Right.
I think you want to see people who are if we have to start a 24-hour watch shift, wherever those drop boxes are, if the Supreme Court allows those drop boxes, and I don't think they are, but let's say they will, you're going to see the militia, not literal militia, but the voting watching militia, have a 24-hour camp out to watch those ballot boxes. You'll see, I believe, citizens getting involved more so in the election from everything we can do legally. But ultimately, yes, I don't have any notion to give you that will motivate you more so than we have to fight. There is no other. We are against the wall.
Right.
When you can have drag dancing at the Brewers game, drag dancing at a local food market or a farmer's market, and children sitting first row while adults show their crotch. When we have CRT that's permeating through our schools, and we have $6 gas, the person in the suburbs where you are, or in the farm country of Wisconsin, we have nothing left than to vote. There is nothing left for us to do. We have no other recourse.
I don't know, because I've mentioned this on my show a bunch of times. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but have you ever heard of a congressman named Larry McDonald?
No, sir.
He was, I believe, I know he was in East Coast, on one of the coastal states. I think it was Georgia. I'm not sure. He died in a Korean liner when it was shot by Soviet missiles back in the 1980s. But he had a really good saying that I always like to bring up every now and again, and he said there are 4 boxes in the rightful defense of liberty. There's a soapbox, the jury box, the ballot box, and the ammo box. Please use in that order. And my addendum to that one is right now we're down 3 boxes.
Wow.
But have you, and just on another one, have you ever heard of the Battle of Athens?
The Battle of Athens?
Yeah.
I mean, I believe so, but go ahead, elaborate.
There was a bunch of guys who just came back from World War II. It was I think it was 1946. And in Athens, I want to say Tennessee. You can look it up online if you want. Just look up the Battle of Athens, and it'll take you to it. But I think it was at Athens, Tennessee. So they came back. Their town board, their town mayor, all their town leadership were so corrupt, and the police were involved in it as well, that when they went to vote, these guys knew how corrupt they were, and they all voted against them. But they were so corrupt that they took the ballot boxes and said, we're not going to release them. We're going to count them inside the city hall. These guys who had just come back from World War II said, no, you're not. You're going to count them out where we can all see. And they said, no, that's not the way it works. And they knew they were going to throw the ballots out that they didn't like and switch the vote around. These guys went and grabbed their rifles, shotguns, whatever armaments they had, and they had a shootout with the people in the city hall until the people in the city hall finally surrendered. They counted the votes and found out that that these guys had been voted out of office. And that's what it took for them to preserve their voting integrity. I don't know that I would want to see it come to that, but people right now, a lot of the people that I talk to have been pushed to a limit when it comes to this. So, if we can allay the fears of people and say, okay, look, and again, I might be one of them. I'm absolutely disgusted with what happened with it back in 2020. So,
yeah, I mean, there are a lot of discrepancies that happen, no doubt. I think people stretched the law, broke the law, interpreted the law. Those voting, those
women and men inside of those retirement homes, those people that collected these ballots in the park.
Right, yeah, the harvesting.
There was a lot, all the people who claimed indefinitely confined and never provided a picture of their photo ID. It was just a lot, but we have some inclination of hope. And I can only turn back to what happened a few weeks ago. I know there were not a lot of Milwaukee County or Dane County victories, but throughout the state of Wisconsin, people voted. But I'll be honest with you, I can't tell you because I don't know what happened. But I don't know if those were the areas of target anyway. We know it was the 5 counties or the 5 cities from Milwaukee, Green Bay. I forget all the 5. Kenosha, Racine.
I think Madison was one.
Madison, I think that's the 5th one. So they didn't really have a lot of votes, I think, on this past election. But yeah, I don't have any witty response to why. I just know we have to. That's all I know is that we have to. Because I'd rather die on my feet than beg on my knees.
Exactly. Okay, well then let's again. So I know you're running for treasurer and all of that, but I'm looking at your campaign flyer that you gave me the other day, and one of your priorities is stopping CRT in the schools. Now I don't know how much influence the treasurer can have over that, but just out of curiosity, what is your take on CRT?
Well, I think first and foremost, the treasurer. So part of that duty of the Board of Land Commissions, part of that funding goes to public school libraries. So one of the things that I want to support that if you're a library and you're pushing, transgender sexual books, be it hetero or homo, I don't want a bunch of overly sexualized books in public school libraries, nor books that, promote people to hate our country. If those are the books you want to stock in your library, then I have a good feeling that the statewide taxpayers don't want to do it. You pay for that out of your local school budget then. Ask your local people to pay for those books because we're not giving you any additional library funding.
Just out of curiosity, have you seen any of those?
Oh, those type of books?
Yeah.
I saw some in the reporting, and I was very disturbed by it.
I saw one of these mothers, I forget what school district she belonged to. It wasn't here in Wisconsin anyway. She actually published, took photographs and actually published what was in those books. And quite frankly, it amounts to nothing more than kiddie porn, period. It is sexually explicit with kids. I mean, even if it's just drawings and it's just drawings and illustrations, doesn't matter. That is child pornography that they're pushing on kids in grade school.
Yeah, and I never knew until this time around. I was telling someone this the other day, LGBTQ, I'm a minister, but I'm not perfect.
Right.
God is working on me every day. But I just don't know why is your lifestyle so sexual? Like everything revolves around drag and overly. What is that about? If that's who you are, okay, I don't agree with it. But why is your lifestyle so sexual? I mean, is that part of that? Don't seem like that's necessary. Like women, right? Women do dress provocatively, I guess, right? But they do it. I mean, I guess my concern is like, why is everything so sexual? Like, why is everything, why can't you lip sync? Well, why does it have to be, so sexual in your dance? What is that about? And I guess it's just reflective of what we have in our society when you look at, just any, quite honestly, I guess if you look at any of the mainstream television shows and they give these award shows, and these award shows are just, to your point, it ain't even soft porn. It's porn on stage. And I guess these men who fashion themselves as women want to have that same stage presence and be. So again, it's just overly sexual overly sexualizing of children and I guess the broader community. But that's my bigger point is that, from an educational standpoint, that, I would hope that I can convince the other two panelists to say we're not funding money for that school. If that's what they want to do in those libraries, then they should get money from the local school budget and they should pay for their library. And that's the stance that I want to take as one of the commissioners, saying I'm not voting to give that school any money for libraries if they have it in their bookshelves without the parents' permission. I'm not doing that.
Or even start hosting drag queen story hour, or whatever. But I think this might be one avenue where a lot of this started was there was a KGB defector that G. Edward Griffin did an interview with back in the 1980s. And that guy named Yuri Bezmenov. And he talked about the methodology of how to take down a country without actually going into a war. Military wars really don't work as well as a lot of people think. And you have to take it down from the inside. And the first step in it was called the demoralization of a country. And he explained the step and the process involved in it. And then G. Edward Griffin asked, remember, this is in the early 1980s. He asked, as far as the U.S. is concerned, how far along are we? And he goes, that's already been done. We're on to the next step already.
Really?
So this is not something that's new. This has been going on for a while. Remember back in the early part of the movement, all the gay people were saying is, look, all we want is the right to get married. And there were a lot of people sounding warning bells saying that's not where it's going to end. And look where it is now. So, if that's what you want to do with your life, okay, all the power to you, but please do it. You don't need to bring it into the schools. You don't need to bring it into the libraries. You don't need to bring it out into whatever and have a bunch of woke people shoving this in their kids' face.
I mean, we don't do it for heterosexual relationships, do we? We don't.
No, I don't see too many the hetero pride parades going down the street
of men and women that's holding hands and waving, going with affectionate, how it's just over the top, man, and it's unnecessary to me.
But going back to the idea of the critical race theory, here's the thing. Here's my take on it, if you don't mind. All critical race theory does is tell everybody, it doesn't matter what ethnicity you are, is that you are never going to be more than the color of your skin, period. And that's it. And what a massively racist statement to make to anybody.
Well, I agree. So to me, critical race theory is nothing more than Marxist communist idea. And you just swap out the class struggle and the class fight and just put in race. That's all CRT is. It's Marxism, take out class and invoke race. That you have a population of individuals that hate country, that hate our country to its core because they believe they don't belong here. And if you have someone who hates country, then you cannot be surprised when they don't care about the areas in which they live. They don't care about what they do to live or survive, and they don't value the things of this country. If critical race theory is true, and this is where they get into this whole double talk conversation, if critical race theory is true, then why would any student want to come back to school the next day? If you say that I won't make it because the odds are stacked against me, then why should I come back to school the next day to learn algebra? There's no hope for me, right? There's no reason to come. If you say that white kids are inherently racist, then why should they come? Why should they even go to church to even try to find salvation if they are just biologically and nothing can change because it's the science? Then why even go to church? Why even go to mass if they believe there's no hope for them? Then why even have God? If there's no hope for white people and there's no hope for black people, then what is God for then?
Well, I think that's one of the aspects of it, That's always been one of the aspects of any totalitarian government, communism in particular, is they want to get rid of anybody's faith. It does, whatever faith it happens to be, they want to get rid of it for the very simple reason the state wants to be the ultimate authority. They will suffer no rival. And so if they take away anything that you might believe that's a higher power than the state, well, that's got to go.
Because you got a chance to rise up. You have a chance to change your plot in life if you believe in power higher than government. So I'm against critical race theory. I don't believe it's not Black History. We have a whole month of Black History Month. So what do you add? Especially again, if you want to say that America is fundamentally a racist country, then I guess you forget that at least 3 to 4 of the founding fathers were totally against slavery.
Well, here's the thing: if critical race theory is true, explain Ben Carson to me. Okay, explain Thomas Sowell to me. Explain. Even going back further, explain Frederick Douglass to me. Explain how some of the most brilliant people I've ever listened to. How do you explain them?
Condoleezza Rice, Clarence Thomas, Colin Powell. The list goes on and on. The 5 that were part of Reconstruction. So the list goes. The first Black elected officials on the federal level were 5 African Americans.
Right.
So again, if this country is fundamentally racist, then tell me how a party in Ripon, Wisconsin, that was started for the freeing of Black people. So what critical race theory conveniently leaves off, that for every major issue in our country, there were always a people that stood up against the wrong and tried to make it right. Typically, those individuals were called Republicans, and they don't want to talk about that. The Republican Party is founded right here in the state of Wisconsin and Ripon. A party that was against slavery, abolitionists. So that alone lets you know that how is America fundamentally racist if there was a people that actually stood against it? Because then they'll go back into this argument of, well, white people. Well, tell me what white people are you talking about? Because the white people I know, they were against slavery. In fact, they died in the battlefield for freeing people who look like me. So what white people are you talking about? Because then you go into this whole argument again that it goes against their allies, because their allies are Democrats and liberals and progressives. And in their mind, the worst ever is a white Republican. He's racist. Or next best is a Black conservative. He's a sellout.
Right. Yeah. Look at what they said about Larry Elder. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Man, I love Larry Elder.
Yeah, I got a chance to meet him. He's a really good guy. But look what they said about him when he was running for governor of California during the recall. And one of the most dumbass things you could ever possibly imagine. And by the way, it was said by the Democrats and the liberals out there in California. They called him the black face of white supremacy. And yet somehow people who are on the more conservative side, people who are more on the libertarian side of the political spectrum, we're the racists.
And that's the problem. When we don't know our history as Republicans, and we need to know the history, like this whole argument of like reparations. Republicans have to know that I spent a year learning these BLM movements here in Milwaukee.
Right.
And having to listen to them, I shared a lot of panels with them. And a lot of people conflate reparations for 40 acres and a mule. So, which are two different concepts. Reparations denote that someone owes you something.
Right.
And America doesn't owe African Americans anything. That cost was paid for in the Civil War in blood.
Right. Yes, one of my ancestors was one of them.
40 acres
no,
and
actually,
a mule.
three of my ancestors were some of them.
40 acres and a mule is a resettlement plan that Lincoln and other generals thought about once these slaves were freed. They asked the slaves what they wanted. And the slaves, dig this, didn't want government handouts. They wanted land to take care of themselves. It never came to pass. But this is where blacks misconstrued 40 acres for reparations. They conflate the two, and they're totally different because we use resettlement plans to attract other people from other countries to America to come farm the land. We've done it plenty of times to help settle our country here. But we conflate these things, but we have to know the history in order to actually push back against these liberals and these progressives who rewrite history. Like, oh, well, there was a switching of the two parties. It's not the Republican Party of Lincoln anymore. The party switched. And I tell them very candidly, well, show me in history where the party switched. Because if that is true, that's pretty newsworthy. That a party that was founded on freeing slaves all of a sudden wanted to be the party that actually thought slavery was okay. And then the party that thought slavery was okay now sees slavery as wrong. There should have been some writing somewhere. Show me the periodicals, the newspapers. That was newsworthy. Somebody was like, oh, we got to write about this. But there's no power. There's no papers. No periodicals.
Just to make a comment here, the Democrat Party never thought slavery was wrong, and they still don't.
Exactly.
They just changed the method of it.
You're correct. And again, if that actually happened, show me the periodicals. At the start of every session, no matter what level of government, be it state, federal, or local, there's something called the ledger. Your first day on the job, you take the pictures, whatever, and you sign the ledger with your name in it and the party that you were associated with. Show me the ledger of this great switching of the party. Show me the ledger. And you'll never find it. So these are the revisionist history, like CRT, critical race, that the left has been able to promulgate in these schools, the public schools, and say, oh, well, they're not the party. They a racist party now. Like what? Show me that. Our pillars for freedom has never changed.
Exactly.
But if you don't know that as a conservative, you cannot refute this when they attack you. That's one of the things that makes my candidacy so potent, because I know what you're going to say. I saw you BLMers for a whole 2 years. I listened to your conversations and heard your talk and your rhetoric, which is nothing but Marxism. You're not talking about black freedom. You talk about Marxism. You hate this country.
Yeah, they admitted it. I don't remember which one of the founders of BLM it was. I think it was Colors. She came out and said, "Yeah, we are trained Marxists. This is what we do."
But the people who are the local BLMers don't even know what that means. Like, you don't know why you pumping that noise up. Do you know what they're saying? They hate America and they hate traditional unity, traditional marriages, the traditional unit of family. You know that? Well, that's not what I stand for. Then why are you walking around with a BLM shirt then? And a sign. What are you doing?
Well, it's like these people who walk around with the Che Guevara shirts on, but have no idea who Che Guevara was.
Man,
and if anybody if anybody really knew who Che Guevara was, the black community especially, they would not be wearing those shirts.
Unbelievable. Again, this is the revisionist history. You know, we have to be able to refute these things, and that's why my candidacy of being an American black is so important, because I can talk about these things quite honestly that my white counterparts cannot say, but I can, because I know the truth. Now, they may call me a sellout and Uncle Tom, which they always do, but you don't want to refute the actual history. Again, when you talk about this whole party switch, and they can't really tell me or how black on black crime is well That's anybody where you live is going to always be white on white or whatever on crime. But tell me why, again, there's so much killing in the black community. And those black communities are ran by who? Democrats.
Well, Beetlejuice down in Chicago.
She's terrible. She's terrible. But you have these black activists, the black church, black liberals, and then all the white liberals together. You guys are the ones who run Milwaukee since the creation of Milwaukee for the most part. And this is the byproduct of it. Don't get mad now that the kids don't want to go to school. You've been telling them America's racist, and they're not going to make it. So don't ask for additional funding for school, or we just have more money. No. You told them that America's fundamentally racist, and you will never make it. You told them that. So now you want more money to do what? You're reaping what you've sown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if anybody calls out some of these black community leaders or these activists or whatever, especially me being a white guy, they're not going to listen to me. They're just going to look at me and say, okay, you're a white racist, go away. And that's going to kill the argument, right? And I've seen that happen. I had a friend of mine back in California, back in the San Fernando Valley, my friend David Hernandez. He put together this meeting because the tensions between the black community and the police department were running pretty high at the time. And so he put together a big meeting with the church leaders and the number 2 cop in the LAPD who was working in the San Fernando Valley. They showed up with some other police officers and they were doing a community outreach. Hey, let's work together and so on and so on. And the black church leader, I don't know who he is personally, but the first thing he said, it's like, why did you bring all these white cops into my church? Killed the entire meeting right then and there. Everything went downhill from that point. And it's just like, why would you sabotage everything like that?
Because they have no interest in real partnership. Because there's money, there's prestige, there is importance if you continue this to stoke the flames of division.
Right.
If you continue to stoke,
don't get me wrong. There are some police out there that need to be pulled back a little bit. I mean, they do get and they're bad cops, just like there's bad people and everything else. But when you do get the people saying, "Hey, let's work together," and all of a sudden one guy comes in and just screws the pooch on the entire thing, it's like, what are you doing?
Well, again, to your point, there's always bad apples in every profession.
Right.
People can say, well, cops, no one hates a dirty cop more than a cop. No one. You tell me right now how many FBI agents right now hate James Comey and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page.
I can't even imagine.
Because they made the whole agency look bad, and they're over whatever you want to call it, of all the stuff they did. And so those are bad cops that should never be into power again. Comey, McCabe, Page, none of those people, Strzok, should never be in law enforcement capacity again. And I don't think they will be. But yes, you have bad actors, but just like you got bad acting pastors who do things they shouldn't have done. So again, there's traffic in trying to always forever create division and a boogeyman or a straw man, right? It is easier for us to talk about, white people and racism versus accountability and self-love. You don't want to talk about the ills of Milwaukee and the fares of Milwaukee because that means you don't really want to talk about your own personal families. You don't want to talk about your own personal public schools that are failures. You don't want to talk about your own personal Democrat Party that runs Milwaukee who you vote for over and over again. So you may have an argument if Republicans ran Milwaukee and the Republicans were the ones who had the responsible bad schools and Republicans are the ones who are chasing jobs out of Milwaukee. You might have an argument. but we're not doing that. It's your beloved Democratic Party. It is your beloved progressives. Your beloved liberals have run this city, and most of the failed cities in America. You look at any from Gary to Flint, Milwaukee, St. Louis. Who runs these cities?
Los Angeles.
Exactly. And the first thing they will say in rebuttal, well, those are still Republican states. Wait a minute, man. But the cities run the cities. What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee has its own budget, has its own police force, has its own school system. What do you mean? Republicans don't run the city of Milwaukee. Well, they got to follow state law. Wait a minute, man. Milwaukee is all by itself. So don't try to put it again if we don't know the tricks of the left. And again, not to toot my horn, but this is why this candidacy is more than just Orlando running for treasurer. We need a champion right now who can go into these communities and quite honestly, hold these entities and communities accountable and have their own public prosecution for the public to see. Quite honestly, to say, we didn't do this. And show you that this is what you've done. Now, what we offer is something different, but you're not in any way, shape, form, or fashion are going to say the Republicans are responsible for the downtrodden of Milwaukee and that all Milwaukee needs is just a little bit more money. Stop it.
Okay, that's great. Now, we only got a very short time left on the show, and I just want to touch on the last on your flyer here of priorities about everybody's favorite subject for the last 2 years, which is the COVID-19 mandates. We saw what Tony Evers tried to pull in here in Wisconsin by overextended his authority, by the way, which is a codified crime, but nobody in Madison wants to deal with it when I brought it up to them. So, again, I don't know what any kind of authority the Treasurer's office would have over this, but give us your take on the whole mess that COVID-19 became and still is.
Well, I think for me, a lot of what I want to do in the Treasurer's position is a lot of advocacy because it doesn't have a lot of direct impact. But yeah, COVID-19, mandates in general, I'm against. I don't mind. I'm a local control guy. So I support local controls when they are reasonable controls. But the Treasurer wouldn't necessarily have anything. Well, again, in its current structure, in its current alliteration of the Treasurer, we don't have any authority whatsoever. Mm-hmm. If the powers were back with the Treasurer would have more financial oversight. To, let's say, local municipalities and would have a bigger role in the state budget, would have more say-so in spending, payables, and receivables. There would be a lot more impact if the powers were there. But in its current form, not a whole lot versus it being a huge bully pulpit of letting local Republicans. And, I think that's the biggest thing that I don't think we've used the pulpit effectively given that most of the powers are gone. The last Republican that won a position on eliminating the position within his first term, and he didn't do it. But yes, I think it's an effective bully pulpit. And I think, unfortunately, I'm hoping to work with all the legislators, so I could be another advocate for speaking truth to power.
And it's really funny because you sound a lot like David King when you say things like that. Because he comes in and I asked him point blank, I was like, well, what's a lieutenant governor going to do? Really? He's like, well, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to agitate, and I'm going to yell my head off and try to get ththings done. But we got less than a minute left here, so.
We probably do it. Me and David probably do it a different way on approaching that. I do look for roles of agreement with legislators. I'm not trying to, blast them. I want to just be able to talk to them in a way and convince them. Because a lot of them I know. I've been working inside the Republican Party for a while.
Okay, we are at the end of the show, so do us a favor real quick. Give out your contact info where people can reach you, maybe even volunteer.
Sure. My phone number, 414-803-6003. My website is OrlandoForwi.com.
Okay. All right, thanks for Orlando Owens for coming on. That was a really great interview. I hope I run into you again. And anyway, we are out of time, so I will see you guys on Friday on the Canada Forum. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.